Check 1, 2.
All right, let's call this meeting to order at 1:31 p.m. Welcome to the October 2nd meeting of the Transportation and Environment Committee. I will start by reading the Code of Conduct. I want to remind committee members and members of the public to follow our Code of Conduct at meetings, which includes commenting only on the specific agenda item and addressing the full body and not individuals. Public speakers will not engage in conversations with the chair, members of the committee, or staff. All members of the committee, staff, and the public are expected to refrain from abusive language. Failure to comply with the Code of Conduct, which will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct of the meeting, will result in removal from the meeting. So we'll call the meeting to order and start with roll call.
Gandelas.
Here.
Ortiz.
Present.
Foley. Davis.
Here.
And Cohen.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have first our item B1, review of the work plan. We're going to be referring the sanitary and storm sewer collection system update from today's agenda. So that's, we need a motion to accept this change in the work plan.
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there any public comment? All right.
Blair Beekman.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Happy October, everyone. It's Gandhi's birthday today, I think. To speak to the stormwater collection system, green stormwater infrastructure status things. This was new funding that came in. I think it was part of new funding from the federal level that the federal level's been funding this treatment plan to like all the major cities of California along the coast, I've noticed. And San Diego is a recipient of this funding now also as well. And I just wanted to kind of offer a reminder of yourselves that, you know, we started doing some serious moving away of people, unhoused people from creek areas with this.
Is this related to the work plan and change that we're just talking about changing? We're just talking about deferring an item from today's agenda to next month.
Yes, but I'm talking about overall practices of the stormwater collection system, stormwater, and part of its purpose was to shush people away, unhoused people. And I wanted to comment to thank yourselves that I think you're trying to do a good job in trying to mitigate that situation and really address the issue. Like with other funding dollars from the stormwater issue, you're trying to address sea level rise issues around the bay. You're trying to be more open about that subject. And I just wanted to compliment yourselves that as we're getting important funding dollars at this time, we have to be thinking of our better practices and ways to work things out. And you're trying to do that. So thank you. Good luck.
Paul Soto.
Yes, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. The social issues that result in our creeks and our drains getting clogged and getting all messed up, you guys talk about that all the time, about homeless issues related to sewer issues and drainage issues all the time. You cross-reference them because you have to. Government is not siloed. Government is very multifaceted and tentacled. You have one diamond, but you have many facets, but it's all one diamond. And that's what I see Blair doing, and that's exactly what I was going to do, is that you need to start cross-referencing this kind of work with the work that you're also doing related to Valley Water. Because unless you make those connections, and that's what public comment is for. Public comment is to come here and to articulate to government and tell you what to do. This isn't top-down, homeboy. This is us telling you, the citizens telling you, that the way you're structuring your government isn't working and that you need to cross-reference this kind of work in order to get the maximum benefit of these dollars that are coming in. I mean, it's really simple. It's really basic. You know, so I'm in full agreement of what Blair had to say, and I'm asking for somebody to have the political will and gumption to start challenging the government because what you're doing thus far isn't working. So start cross-referencing this work with the work that you're doing with Valley Water, and then maybe we can get some movement on it and get some clarity and get some production out of these dollars that are going to be coming in. Thank you.
Back to the committee.
All right, let's vote on this change. All right, the motion carries 4-0. So now we'll move on to our first report to the committee. This is our Climate Smart Semi-Annual Report. Turn it over to you, Carrie.
Thank you. Carrie Romanow, Director of Environmental Services. I'm joined today by Kate Zimba. Kate is a Senior Environmental Program Manager with the Community Energy Department, and Ramses Maddow is a Division Manager with the Department of Transportation. We're reminded on a nearly daily basis that our mission to mitigate climate change remains as important as ever. And we're proud to be here today to highlight the critical climate work that we've accomplished across many departments citywide. And this particular report focuses on the March through August 2023 timeframe. So today we'll start with a quick background on Climate Smart, provide updates on the Climate Smart core activities, community engagement programs and policies, and then we'll look at some of the work that we have on the horizon. The Climate Smart San Jose Plan was adopted in 2018, so we're now a bit over 5 years old. And in November 2021, Council adopted a resolution setting a carbon neutrality by 2030 aspiration. And smartly, you asked us to come back 6 months later and tell you how the heck we were going to do that. So in June 2022, staff adopted the Pathway to Carbon Neutrality by 2030 plan, and that plan identifies 4 key strategies, things we need to do much faster to escalate and accelerate our movement towards carbon neutrality. Those 4 things are zero emission vehicles, reducing vehicle miles traveled by 20%, switching our appliances from fossil fuels to electric, and then getting carbon neutral electricity, so getting all of our community's base plan to carbon neutral power, which obviously gets us to carbon neutrality. The core activities over the period includes getting external funding. So as you look at the Climate Smart San Jose plan, it doesn't say that City Hall will do it all by ourselves. It says we will leverage partners and others. So one of the key tasks that the Climate Smart Deputy Director Julie has on her plate is to go and find external money each and every year. So for 2022-23, we received $6.4 million in total funding for the period, and for the period of this reporting timeline, $4.4 million in March to August 2023. Staff applied for additional $5.6 million in external funding in this reporting period, and with award noticing pending, we're planning to submit another bunch of applications for over $25 million in the next reporting period. Additional core activities during this March to August reporting period is Council approved the establishment of the Climate Advisory Commission, co-led by the Community Energy Department and ESD. And we also, ESD executed a master services agreement with Ramey and Associates to provide an administrative update to the Climate Smart Plan now that we've hit our 5-year milestone. When we adopted the plan, we said we would come back every 5 years with a bit of a refresh. And then ESD completed the community-wide greenhouse gas inventory. And on our next slide, we see kind of where we are in terms of our progress. The inventory of community-wide greenhouse gas emissions, which is using the latest 2021 data, which is also on our dashboard, showed a 10% reduction from the last inventory in 2019. As in previous years, the majority of greenhouse gas emission reductions came from, or greenhouse gas emissions came from transportation at 49% of total emissions and energy use in buildings at 33% of total emissions. 20% of building emissions are coming from natural gas emissions, which is why the city is working to help our community fully electrify all buildings. And 13% is from electricity emissions. Through Climate Smart San Jose Plan, the City Council set a goal for San Jose Community Energy to provide carbon neutral base power by 2021, and SJCE is continuing to work on that important goal. Clearly, COVID had an impact on a lot of things that we were working on. As you can see on the graph, which provides a comparison between the Climate Smart greenhouse gas emission reduction pathway and the pathway to carbon neutrality, we've made quite a bit of progress so far, and we're on track for the Climate Smart overall emission profile, but we are slightly behind in terms of the carbon neutrality, the trajectory to meet our carbon neutrality by 2030 goal. As I mentioned, we never set about reaching carbon neutrality saying City Hall would do it in a silo by ourselves. So community outreach and engagement is a key part of how we developed the plan and also how we intend to implement the plan. Because to meet our carbon neutrality goals, the community has to participate, and we have to shape our plan around things that are most important to them and things they said they were interested in doing. So during this reporting period, ESD recognized 6 Climate Smart Champion Award recipients for outstanding efforts in 2022. We implemented the Go Green Teams pilot, which includes partnerships with Guadalupe River Park Conservancy, San Jose State University, and Valley Verde. And ESD and DOT implemented equity-based co-creation as part of the Zero Emission Neighborhood Zen pilot and shared e-mobility services network. And with that, I will turn it over to Ramses.
Thank you, Carrie. Ramses Madhu, Division Manager of Planning, Policy, and Sustainability. We wanted to highlight this time some great work that's been going on to follow up on that vehicle miles traveled reduction, right? In transportation, we got 2 major changes we need to do, right? We need to green the automobiles and cars and fleets out there, and we need to change the very bones of the city so that folks don't actually necessarily have to use those, right? So I'm going to talk about that second one. We've been very successful in the last, since the beginning of the year, in getting a lot of money that's going to start doing that. One of the bigger ones is the Story Keys Corridor, which is was a community-based transportation planning effort that is now funded all the way through. And that's going to change a roadway that is a Vision Zero focus into a multimodal avenue, giving protected bikeways, bus pads, potentially bus lanes, though that's up for much discussion, and things like that. Another thing we've been doing is implementing the council-adopted transit first policy. We've already secured over $4 million in grants to implement that, and that's creating a centralized signal priority. So as you guys know, we already have a centralized signal priority system for the fire trucks and emergency vehicles. Basically, if you're a fire truck in San Jose, right, you get a green light pretty much everywhere you're going if your lights are on. Now, we can't do exactly the same for the buses because that's not how that works, but we do need to use a similar system to help the transit vehicles work through our controls. And we're waiting on word on another $19 million in grant funding from various sources, doing more complete streets, more transit priority and bike projects. Another great thing that happened in the last reporting period is that MTC has decided to use some of the regional funds to expand our bike share system, particularly to the east side, and starting to see a larger spread of the station-based systems and a huge increase in the actual electric bikes. As you guys, if you guys know, if you council members use the bike share system, you know the electric bikes are kind of the ones that everybody really wants to use, but they do cost a lot more to operate, and so they needed some help getting there. We also have 2 grants out to expand that system even broader into the east side, and we just got actually word last week that one is a 2-phase grant program where we wrote a initial request to expand stations into the east side, and we got a request to come into the second phase, meaning we're going to do the full application now. So we're pretty excited about that. And lastly, we're starting to see the actual implementation of the Transportation Demand Management and Parking Ordinance, which removed parking as a requirement for new development, and starting to learn how to do that, right? It's not necessarily and nobody's coming in with zero parking just yet, but we're starting to see what that means in the marketplace and how that's going to work. And I'm going to pass it off to Kate.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Kate Ziemba, Senior Environmental Program Manager for the Community Energy Department, here to provide an update on zero emissions vehicles. The California Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Project, or CALI-VIP, is a $14 million rebate program for level 2 and DC fast charging in San Jose at multifamily workplaces and public places. In total, 140 level 2 and 24 fast chargers have been installed, including 40 level 2 and 13 fast chargers over the reporting period. In June, the program implementer Center for Sustainable Energy started the program closeout process, and close the program to new applications. So the program will be fully completed with all projects installed by September 2025. Last November, Council approved a fast charging hubs pilot program where SJCE will contract with one or more developers to install, own, and operate up to 3 fast charging hubs in areas of the city that lacked public charging infrastructure. Over the reporting period, staff conducted conversations with developers to better understand the market, and we are reevaluating the scope, identifying opportunities to scale, and plan to rebid the project to receive more offers and return to council with recommended program changes. Community energy staff have also kicked off an EV education pilot geared towards educating low-income households about the stackable incentives available to them for buying an EV and the lifetime fuel costs and emission savings. Staff engaged residents in East San Jose through neighborhood groups, schools, and community organizations. Some of the activities included offering one-on-one assistance, navigating financial incentives, holding community dinners, and posting a very popular blog called I Just Bought an EV and Here's What I Learned. Now I'll pass to Carrie for an EV reach code update. Well, now on to an update for carbon neutral power. So San Jose Clean Energy in 2023 as a default offers green source to customers. It's 60% renewable, 95% carbon free, and rates are 1% to 3% lower than PG&E. Customers continue to upgrade to Total Green for 100% renewable energy. SJCE continues to contract for new renewable and reliability resources, including solar, wind, short and long duration battery storage, and geothermal. Some resources have already begun operating, while some will come online in the next several years. And these resources will provide enough renewable energy to power more than 300,000 homes. In May, we launched Peak Rewards, which is a demand response program that pays commercial customers to save energy during peak events. These are events when demand for electricity and prices are high and a shortfall is expected in supply. This summer has been pretty mild, so we have only called 5 events to date, but the best performing event had 1 megawatt of peak demand reduction, which is the same as the usage of about 500 homes, and about 14 metric tons of CO2 was avoided. We will continue to offer peak rewards and work to recruit more commercial customers. We're getting ready to post an RFP this fall for a program administrator that will expand our demand response programs over time to include residential customers and distributed energy resources such as smart thermostats, batteries, and EV chargers. To start with building electrification, San Jose Clean Energy launched energy efficiency programs in September 2022 that will run through the end of 2024. Our residential program is called the Home Appliance Savings Program. It offers 50 to 70% discounts on efficient electric appliances and free smart thermostats to single-family households located in certain census tracts and moderate-income single-family households citywide. As of August, customers have ordered 140 smart plugs, 160 smart thermostats, and bought 42 appliances. We also offer a business and schools program called the Energy Efficient Business Program. It offers 80 to 90% discounts on HVAC, water heating, and refrigeration components. And so far, we've served 313 businesses and have 126 more businesses and schools in the pipeline. Community energy staff also publish new building electrification web pages that are meant to be one-stop shops on everything residents need to know to install a heat pump water heater, heat pump HVAC, electric cooktop, and electric dryer. And we will continue to update them with rebates and incentives. and more features for customers. And the website is sanjosecleanenergy.org/electric homes. Now I'll pass it back to Carrie.
Thanks, Kate. One of the things that I think is fun about how Climate Smart is working, as you can see, Ramza starts with some EVs, then Kate picks up the EVs. Kate talks about building electrification, and then I'm going to pick up a little bit more building electrification. The Environmental Services Department, in support of the building electrification efforts, we've started the Building Electrification Accelerator Program, which targets 250 buildings, 50 contractors trained, and we expect that to launch in the next reporting period. We created the block maps tool to provide building data insights and developed a draft program design, initiated and convened the Community Advisory Board of 15 organizations to inform the program design and marketing, and developed a request for information to identify local contractors to participate in the program. For workforce development, we're working with labor organizations, local, regional, and statewide organizations to leverage available resources and bring trainings to contractors working in San Jose, and we're working with developers to craft a list and survey so we understand more about what is currently out there and what contractors are interested in. The Building Performance Ordinance applies to non-residential and multifamily buildings of 20,000 square feet or larger. And in 2023, beyond benchmarking phase required buildings to meet key performance standards or take additional energy and water efficiency improvement steps for their particular building. There's also a web page that supports those buildings subject to the performance standard so that they have a kind of one-stop shop, as Kate is also doing on her work. Looking ahead, we have quite a bit going on in the next reporting period, and as you can see at the bottom, we anticipate bringing 4 things to City Council: the building reach code update in November, the building electrification special session in December, the Climate Advisory Commission in November, December, and then the zero waste element in February of '24. And with that, we're available for questions.
All right, thank you for the update on one of my favorite topics. Let's start with public comment.
We have 2 public comment cards. First is Ruth Marino. You can make your way down to the podium. You will have 2 minutes to speak. And after Ruth, we will have Gordon Chester. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Ruth Marino, and I'm with San Jose Community Energy Advocates. We're a volunteer community organization. First of all, I want to thank Carrie and her team for their great climate smart work and for their continuing engagement with community stakeholders. Our group submitted a comment letter to you. I'm not sure if you've read it regarding the Green Fleet policy. Although it's not directly under the Climate Smart plan, it does relate to zero emission vehicles, which is part of their plan. The policy was established in 2007, and as you can imagine, it's extremely outdated. There weren't any EVs at that time for sale. So in January 2020, Mayor Liccardo and the City Council directed staff to update that policy, as well as to complete a life cycle cost analysis of replacing all non-electric vehicles with EVs within the next 5 years, and the charging infrastructure to support it. And this was supposed to be due in June of 2020. As you know, the world shut down 2 months later, so that didn't happen. A year later, staff did say that they were going to complete this work, but they haven't completed it, although they do have an staff does have an electrification first program. In our comments, and by the way, we recently bought, the city recently bought 3 Ford Mustang Mach-E EVs for the police department. So the EVs can now charge within 20 to 30 minutes, so there wouldn't be a problem. So in our letter, we talk about Inflation Reduction Act provides direct pay tax credits, as well as the Advanced Clean Fleets, which went into effect yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Gordon, please.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Gordon Chester. I'm a District 9 resident, been living there for over 30 years, and I'm raising my 5-year-old in the same house that I was raised in. I wanted to show my support for this plan and to emphasize a few requests that hopefully the committee can have some kind of impact on. I think that a wonderful way to reduce vehicle miles traveled would be to continue the energy that's been put into the transit signal priority. I also would love to see an expansion of the bus-only lanes, not only to help the people that depend on buses around the region, but also to capture some drivers that are going to the north and northwest portions of the county in order to get them to and from their jobs without needing to use a car individually. I'd also like to switch gears, pun intended, to bolster the Better Bike Plan. A lot of bikers a lot of people that want to bicycle that are not bikers feel most safe behind a barrier, and I hope that we can bolster that while also bolstering the e-bikes that are becoming so popular, learning from Denver's e-bike rebate plan, and then moving forward with an even better plan, more aggressive plan maybe. And then lastly, I'd like to also note that everything that I mentioned here also supports the 2021 San Jose Bill of Rights for Children and Youth bill that was adopted by every council member of that year. These changes would enable kids to be more mobile and independent as we used to be. And that's speaking as someone who had ventured around the Southwest Valley on bike before I was in middle school, walked down to my middle school on my own, traveled from my house in District 9 to my friend's house in Santa Clara using VTA's bus routes at age 13, and also took the bus to work, took the bus to high school before my mom recommended I get a car.
Thank you. On to our Zoom comments. Paul.
Yes, Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. One of the things I'd like to request is that you use in these grant allocations, you use in them this rebate program that was just referenced. You see, you want to implement the bikes and the electric bike, that's all fine. But you also have to take into account the infrastructure that's necessary to accommodate that. You want to put everybody on bikes, then you also must assume the responsibility of ensuring that an infrastructure is in place for safety purposes and safety reasons. So what this city is doing, and this is coming from 6 years of consistent participation at these meetings, what the city is doing is exploiting the poor, and this is how it's doing it. It's using the segregation that it created via redlining. Now, generationally, it is exploiting those conditions inside those barrios in order to implement that into your grant allocations, into your grant applications. I gotta go, I got a county meeting to attend.
Blair.
Hi, Blair Beekman here. Thanks for the words of Paul. Thanks for what he said earlier. You know, I'll comment on public comment time, open forum time more about the subject. Thanks for his words. For this item, I wanted to comment that, thank you for the words of public speaker Ruth Moreno, who I think it's nice when she arrives and appears at the public comment for local community energy items and such. I have a few important points in our great move, our big move towards more electric future. That we always have to be considering, where all these rare earth minerals are coming from for our batteries. Basically, we really have to want to consider worker rights issues of the people who mine these things. So, as much as we are building our electric future, consider the worker rights issues involved and what they have to go through. If we do, that's how we build the more holistic, sustainable future we're trying to consider, basically. So just a friendly reminder of that at this time. It's what me and Paul try to do, is offer important reminders as the process is going, relevant reminders. With that said, I also wanted to mention that in San Diego, where I'm living and loving right now, they are working on issues of cars, the batteries, bicycle batteries, mopeds, they're exploding. The scooter, all the little electric batteries, they're having issues. There's issues arising. I hope you can address that here in San Diego and San Jose, and want to address that and want to make it kind of a open conversation what to do about it and make ourselves aware of it. It's really nice that they're at least acknowledging it in San Diego, and I hope you could do that in San Jose. And boy, we really got to work on this issue, and good luck how we can. Thank you.
Lillian?
I love the last, yes, can you hear me? I love the last speaker who said he lives in San Diego, but he still calls in. Anyway, I live in District 3 currently, and the other day there was a young lady on an, I think it's called an electronic scooter. I assume those are under e-bike, and that's why I'm commenting, because you couldn't see the little kid that was in front of her on the e-scooter while she was driving it, and she didn't have a helmet, and neither did he. And if you are going to encourage people to do bike sharing, e-bikes, like you stated, with Vision Zero in place in San Jose, connecting that with people who are on the e-scooters, which I think that's what they're called. They seem to be very popular. We need to kind of put into place some safety issues also, because a car and an e-scooter with a mom and a little kid on it just does not work. Thank you.
Back to the committee.
All right, thank you. Let me go back to my, all right, Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Carrie and the entire Climate Smart staff for your hard work, as well as the different departments working in collaboration with you. Your hard work has been very noticeable, and we appreciate it. And we know that you are on track to achieve your goals. I was especially excited to see that Climate Smart staff began to attend high road training partnerships meetings. As we look at electrification of our city's buildings, it will no doubt require new electricians, new plumbers, and other parts of the HVAC workforce that are aging out, which of course will require premier training programs. I wanted to ask, based on our attendance of these high road training partnership meetings, have we learned anything? Has there been any benefits so far to our attendance?
Thank you. We're in a lot of big listening mode now, and trying to see, as I think I mentioned at another meeting, trying to make sure that we're not getting in the way, that we're creating an inflection point where things move faster. So I think clearly what we've learned so far, predominantly from the pipe fitters organizations, is, hey, help us transition. And so looking at where the overlap of strengths are for different job functions. But we still think there's a lot more to do to get younger folks into those industries, while at the same time helping more experienced folks do kind of skill set transition. And so I don't have anything, I think, shocking to say that we've learned, except that the city definitely has a role in it, and that we are all working together to kind of make sure that this, like I said, the city, multiple departments don't take us off track, and that we have one kind of voice for the city. And so we're looking to consolidate some of that a little bit more, particularly in the job training arena.
Thank you. And I know that we're conducting a contractor survey at the moment. Are there plans for next steps outside of Block Power, the Block Power Accelerator project, or is this designed to feed into that project?
So at this point, it's feeding into what is now the Block Power program. We are still reassessing if that's the direction we want to go. There's some nuances to their approach that we're kind of refining, but we did have other bidders, so we know the program can move forward. Clearly, we're hopeful we'll reach an agreeable resolution, but but there's some nuances to that right now that we're negotiating through. So our intent is we would start with those 50 contractors. That's a manageable pilot for us to learn, so then we can go much bigger beyond that. Or if there's a third-party entity that maybe we just fund them and they take it and go. So again, making sure the city's not slowing progress and not making it harder for the private sector to go at the pace that we need everyone to go at.
Oh, thank you.
Anything to add?
I'd also like to follow up on the energy and water building performance ordinance. The memo says that the initial ordinance requirement of owners of large buildings, it's requiring them to track and report their energy and water usage, and that was at a high of 75% this year. As we move into setting standards for efficient energy and water usage, only 55% of covered buildings are complying. I wanted to ask if there was any sort of enforcement mechanism, if any, that the city has to encourage building owners to comply with the ordinance.
Thank you. There is the ability to use enforcement. I'm not recommending we do that yet. I think that with the programs that San Jose Community Energy, Clean Energy is also bringing forward, there's an opportunity for us to, I think, sort of ensure that the building owners are aware of those programs so that we can help them maneuver through existing grants that are there and then help them through the implementation process. And so what we're trying to do is sort of differentiate between where folks just haven't gotten the paperwork in and where folks just have no intent to comply. Mm-hmm. And so we're not at the point where we've identified a cluster that we think are resistant to doing it. And although that's not to say we never would, I would much rather bring people into the fold and work together. But I do expect at some point there'll be some outliers.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Just wanted to make sure that if needed, there was some sort of enforcement mechanism. It sounds like there is. Good to hear. And then finally, as someone who represents a district where EV adoption has been far outstripped infrastructure, I believe there are less than I think a dozen EV chargers in District 5, if not less. And I'm excited to hear about the charging hub pilot. As we enter the rebid project, are there any specific neighborhoods we're looking as a potential location for a hub?
Yes, as you mentioned, thank you for your question. But yes, in particular, lots of charging deserts in District 5 on the east side. And so right now we're looking at city buildings. The next step is to look at city buildings with existing electrical capacity and seeing where we can get the chargers in quickly. And so taking a step back from that project to see, so we don't have sites exactly identified now, but we are open.
Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to that ongoing discussion. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for the report. And as you know, this is a really important topic, not just for me, but for the next generations of San Jose residents and the whole planet. I have a few questions on some of the items in the report. I was excited to see the progress we're making. It looks like, the map shows that we're on the line, kind of on line to achieve carbon neutrality if we were projected out, although I assume that there was low-hanging fruit at the early stage of that curve and that it gets much harder as you move down the curve. What are your thoughts about how do you feel about how we will be able to continue that progress in the years ahead?
So I'll start, and then Ramses will close us out. Really it's focusing on this building electrification. So if that's 33% of our emissions, moving to kind of refresh our buildings off of natural gas, predominantly the heating, air heating and cooling, and water heating, trying to stay away from the stoves that are emotionally attaching for people. They tend to really like those, so not the highest point of our emissions. So really taking advantage of emerging funding opportunities to help people move in that direction, because that also gets the majority of our community that doesn't have air conditioning, it lets them have air conditioning too, which we think is important as temperatures continue to rise. So it has kind of a dual benefit there, and then making sure we get our base energy portfolio to 100% carbon free. And that gets us really far in terms of the building electrification part, and then lots of progress on EVs.
Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Thanks for the great question. So right now, 49% of emissions are coming from the transportation sector, right? And so there's multiple layers of work going on there to try to keep us in line with these goals, right? And right now we're hitting a lot of the I would say low-hanging fruit, but also the entire world and USA and California pieces, right? The pieces that are moving. And that's really the electrification of the fleets, right? By 2035, all new vehicles in California sold will have to be electric. That's going to keep us going in a really great direction for a while. And as long as we can actually do, and follow up on Councilmember Ortiz's great point, there's not enough chargers in certain neighborhoods yet, right? We need to make that happen, right? So that's going to kind of keep us going. But then the next part in kind of trying to keep us there is actually doing these bigger pieces of complete streets and actually creating an environment where people want to bike, take transit, and things like that, right? So it's multifaceted and lots of different layers happening at the same time. I think we're all working really quickly to get as much of the pieces that are trending and moving with us around the world as quickly as possible and try to ride those trends and then create that groundwork, those actual changes in the system to allow for the larger changes. So that's our strategy on it.
And I would just add, remember the key sort of guiding principle of Climate Smart San Jose is the Good Life 2.0. So it's leveraging these climate opportunities to make not just the environment better, but our community better off. And so focusing on, as Ramses said, not just pushing EVs, but making the whole of the system more attractive and easy for our community.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, last month at our T&E meeting, Kip gave the report about infrastructure, and there was a large section in there as well about things we're doing as far as EV plans. So I know EV infrastructure, including our fleet and other things that we're doing on EV, we're definitely making progress, so I appreciate that. You were talking about converting appliances. There's financial assistance. I'm glad to see the numbers of people who are using it, although it's in the hundreds still and not anywhere where close to where it has to be. How are we promoting that program, and what can we do going forward to try to get more people aware? That's my first part of the question. The second part is there'll be a point at which people won't have a choice anymore when they do their switch. And one of the things we need to do is get them ready for that by preparing their properties so that it'll be electric ready. Is there any initiative in place to start doing that?
Yes, so certainly helping the community understand, hey, when is your furnace and air conditioner going to fail, right? It's not something that you kind of have on your radar all the time. So helping people do that inventory and then do some of the prep work. Do you have, is your panel big enough for it? Do you the selection process around what would make sense, because it is a relatively significant investment. And so we're looking at how we might leverage some youth and some other home inspectors, kind of like you can do a water audit of your house. So how we might help neighbors do that together, and then also potentially provide some youth summer jobs to help folks sort of do that internal assessment. And so the Air District and the state and others are definitely getting those replace on burnout regulations on the books, and then they're also talking about what incentives they're going to offer with those. And so staff from multiple departments are participating in those conversations to let them know that our city strongly believes there has to be money included to help particularly our low-income community take advantage of that and continue to be able to also put food on the table and have hot water and heating and cooling in their homes. So it's also looking at what codes need to change, right? So some communities are looking at, do the setbacks need to change so that you can, if you've never had an external air conditioning unit, you have a place to put it on your property so that you can put in a heat pump. And so we're looking at where some of those things might need to change in our city so that they're ready to go when we're ready to run. But the housing stock is so diverse that we're just trying to do some broad strokes to categorize homes to get an idea of what we're looking at, and then which ones could go fastest, which might require more incentives, and which are just going to be one-offs where we're going to have to help people design some things because they're not standard. So lots of things, no 100% answers yet, but lots of folks figuring out how we're going to get there pretty fast.
And are we still on target to come to have coming to council in the spring a discussion of the allocation of reserves from San Jose Clean Energy towards some of these incentives?
Thank you, Councilmember. Yes, we are. We are on track to meet our reserve target by the end of the year, and so we will come in the spring with our recommendation of programs for the next calendar year that utilizes that.
Great, I've been looking forward to that for a while. On to transit signal priority. You talked about a grant for that, and you mentioned buses. Is it going to also be applied to light rail in some places, or is it mainly a bus exercise at this point?
It's mostly focused on buses, but we are working with VTA to do equipment upgrades. So with the light rail, there's two elements. There's ours and theirs, right? And a lot of the times we have a lot of trouble actually understanding where the light rail vehicles are in relationship to the signal controls, right? So we're working with VTA to upgrade that information set so that it can help us do that, because most of those signals already have most of the logic and equipment to be able to be prioritized. But if we don't know if the vehicles, if you can think about St. James Park here, where you have one of the stations, train stops at the station, are we supposed to keep it green for it while it's staying, and it's only half a block more until it gets to the light? And so we need more information to make a better situation without causing havoc for everybody else in the situation. So long-winded way of saying yes, all of the above. The grants are focused on particular bus routes, particularly on the Monterey corridor going up to the BART station, 523 and 22, 522, the biggest, most ridden routes first. But now that we have that kind of central core logic system in our controls, now it still costs a little bit per intersection, but that marginal cost is quite a bit less than, let's say, putting in the hardware equipment that we used to do. So we can start expanding, and that's what we're looking at.
I know that one of the things that you talked about was the importance of transit and increasing transit ridership, but transit ridership is actually going the other direction, particularly since the pandemic. So I guess we probably believe that some speeding up the lines through some of these techniques will maybe encourage people to get back onto transit? Or are there other things that we're thinking about?
Yeah, that's definitely the hope. Interestingly enough, VTA has seen one of the best rebounds of the Bay Area networks percentage-wise in terms of their ridership since the pandemic. So that's really great to hear. I don't know if you ever see the 500 disgorging its large amount of riders here in front of City Hall, but we're seeing a pretty good uptick there. But you're right, the numbers are still down from pre-pandemic. Yeah, we need to make a better situation for transit riders. It needs to become competitive. It needs to be comfortable. It needs to be fast. It needs to be reliable. And a lot of those pieces are in our control. So we're trying to do the parts that we can to help the system along.
Yeah, I know some parts of the system do have better signal priority, especially for light rail in other parts of the county. So I hope that we'll be working on that, particularly along the First Street corridor, because it's a really long ride if we don't improve that. Thank you. And the last thing I was going to ask about is our reach codes for EV charging. I know it's coming in November. We've talked a lot about what we want to do for buildings and especially new buildings. But we also should be thinking about how we retrofit existing buildings so that people who live there can have EV charging or can buy EVs, and they need the charging in those buildings as well. I recently have been paying a little bit of attention to the mobile EV charging options and wondering whether we might want to work with either developers or property owners and figure out how that cost might be better than buying or building the actual hardwire infrastructure. Have we looked at that at all?
We're looking at everything. Right now, the reach code itself is trying to get a base of installation across single-family and multifamily homes, so that that base is there. We haven't necessarily dug into the mobile option as one of our city-ordained directions. That market is still pretty nascent, and kind of what does it do? How does it work? All that kind of stuff hasn't kind of been installed or kind of thought through in all the plans yet. You want anything?
Yeah, I encourage us to look at it soon. I mean, because before people spend money unnecessarily, these options may be moving along pretty rapidly. And if you do a search, you can find multiple companies. They offer a little robotic device that drives around garages and can charge the vehicles where they are rather than have to park in a space. I think that's better for multiple reasons, and mainly because the idea that you would have 5 spaces in a parking garage where 100 units or 200 units are limits who can charge and when, and people have to move their cars. But this could actually provide flexibility and be much better. So I think we ought to see what some of these companies might be able to offer us as a city or the property developers.
Thanks for the recommendation.
All right. So I don't see any other comments from anyone, so is there a motion to accept the report?
Move approval.
Second.
All right, let's move to a vote. All right, we've accepted the report by a vote of 4-0. So that brings us to the next item on our list. Item 2, our municipal microgrid status update. And I think, Walter, you're going to lead us.
Great, thank you so much, Chair Cohen. Good afternoon, Chair Cohen, Vice Chair Davis, and members of the committee. My name is Walter Lin. I'm the Deputy Director for the Public Works Department. I have here with me Carol Bolin, our Program Manager that is managing the Municipal Microgrid Program. We had last presented to the T&E Committee in March of this year, and we have a brief presentation to share with you today to discuss the progress made within the program between March and August, and are open to any questions. With that, I'd like to hand this off to Carol to share with you our presentation for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Walter. Good afternoon, Chair Cohen, Vice Chair Davis, and committee members. I'm Carol Bolin-Wadham, Program Manager of Microgrids for Public Works. You met me back on March 6th during our last programmatic T&E update, and it's my pleasure to be able to present our program update to you today on our activities from March through August 2023. We hope that the committee will see fit to accept the report. Next slide, please. Before we get into the programmatic background, we thought we'd remind the committee just what is a microgrid. We define that as an autonomous power generation system that can switch on and off from the utility grid. Here's a diagram of a typical microgrid and different ways that they can distribute energy. The city is considering systems that generate energy from renewable or rooftop solar and store it in a nearby battery. The battery systems store energy for emergencies and can distribute energy to and from electric vehicles or other parts of the grid. And microgrids offer load reduction from the grid and provide resiliency from planned or unplanned outages. In 2021, Public Works conducted a feasibility study to assess microgrid implementation and priority at 42 critical facilities citywide, including 13 community centers, 2 that care for rare or endangered animals, 14 fire stations, 3 fleet fueling stations, and 12 storm and sanitary sewer pump stations. The sites were evaluated based on their necessity during emergencies, location of critical infrastructure, cost, and within an equity lens, evaluating the location within or adjacent to disadvantaged communities. This map shows the locations of 30 community centers, fire stations, and fleet facilities from that list. The blue color shows disadvantaged community census tracts, and the darker the color indicates a more disadvantaged community. Results of the ranking study most highly prioritized the 2 sites highlighted in red on the map and in photos here, Roosevelt Community Center and Happy Hollow Park and Zoo, including the Leninger Center, Kelly Park, and its adjacent pump station on Coyote Creek. During the review period between March and August this year, programmatic activities focused on developing a staff work plan, increasing staff capacity, securing seed monies, and evaluating alternative funding sources for program implementation while moving forward with a design-build approach for Roosevelt and Happy Hollow. Public Works has successfully completed all programmatic goals for the last 2 quarters by the end of August 2023. Our highlighted successes span team staffing, project design, and program funding, all building our programmatic foundation. Last spring, we successfully hired 2 student interns who are assisting me with administrative responsibilities, and 1 associate engineer within Public Works' City Facilities and Architectural Services Division, or CFAS team, to lead project delivery, including design and construction. CFAS is nearing 100% design plans for both Roosevelt and Happy Hollow microgrids. We are coordinating with PRNS staff on the best approach and layout. Designs for Roosevelt's microgrid system were shared with PRNS and are currently under final CFAS review. Both sites will be ready for staff final review and construction bid release starting next quarter, pending capital funding. We made a budget request of $3.5 million to fund construction of Roosevelt and Happy Hollow for the fiscal year 23-24 budget cycle, but it was not considered for funding at that time. We have proactively sought alternative funding sources to implement the microgrids program. In June, we successfully reserved California Public Utilities Commission Market Access Program rebates, valuing approximately $450,000, that are expected to become available starting in February of 2024. Staff is recommending the allocation of those funds towards the city's microgrid program and energy efficiency projects. We also evaluated 12 different grant opportunities and successfully submitted applications to fund 2 different microgrid projects during the review period. $1.2 million in Federal Highway Administration charging and fueling infrastructure for the San Jose Fleet and Emergency Charging Infrastructure Project, which will fund microgrid-powered Level 3 EV charging stations for large fleet vehicles such as fire trucks, and $650,000 in Regional Resiliency Grant Program planning funds to develop a municipal microgrids roadmap that is focused on planning priority build-out and funding options for decarbonized grid resiliency at the 30 critical community serving locations you saw on the map. Staff expect to receive notification of both grant awards this November. We also worked with the Community Energy Department, administrators of San Jose Clean Energy, to develop a power purchase agreement, to evaluate the development of a power purchase agreement, to fund implementation of a suite of 30 microgrids or more, including Roosevelt and Happy Hollow. San Jose Clean Energy regularly enters into these agreements and would leverage their expertise on our behalf for the contract arrangement. A PPA typically rolls site design, construction costs, operations, and maintenance into 1 monthly power generation cost over a fixed term, typically 20 years. Upfront costs are covered either by the developer or a third party, so the city would not need to make a capital investment. The developer would own, operate, and maintain the resources, thereby reducing the risk associated with ownership. And finally, combining facilities into a single agreement allows for economies of scale to lower the individual system cost. We have made some great progress over the last 6 months, but our program is facing 3 major challenges. On one side, the pathway to carbon neutrality by 2030 goals were introduced to the city in June of 2022 after we conducted our initial feasibility study. And this year, with the California Air Resources Control Board, passed the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule. These new decarbonization goals rely on electrification of buildings and EV adoption to curb emissions, and will therefore increase electrical loads in city facilities, creating new considerations, particularly for our community serving facilities, for their microgrid designs. Also, microgrids will be permanent installations requiring permanent program management, and our program manager position is only funded through next June. Funding is by far our greatest challenge due to the high dollar value associated with microgrids, and our capital requests have so far gone unanswered. We have proactively sought grant opportunities to produce seed money, but not every opportunity fits our desired projects, and no grant assessed this year will cover beyond the construction phase. All grants require upfront funds for implementation, and they only reimburse work after being completed. After assessing different funding options and our original $3.5 million capital request to construct our top 2 sites, we've decided to shift our capital funding focus towards implementing a PPA as evaluated with CED. Power purchase agreements can help alleviate those upfront costs and roll in the maintenance costs and create those economies of scale, but there's still going to be an internal development and construction overhead cost. We expect to amend last year's budget request for the coming fiscal year to cover those development costs and any overhead costs for this agreement, such as CFAS, design, permitting, or CEQA review. Decarbonization is being implemented within our projects to the extent possible, and if our 2 submitted grants are funded, we will be moving forward to fund decarbonization plans coupled with microgrid sizing at our 30 community serving priority locations, and the city's first fleet-based EV charging facility at the Central Service Yard, which will be powered by microgrid. A final challenge to the success of the microgrids program is the temporary funding associated with our program manager position. Again, these installations are permanent capital investments that will require long-term maintenance and staff management, and so therefore Public Works will be requesting that this position be made permanent beginning next fiscal year. Challenges are many, but our staff is motivated and expects to achieve significant progress in the coming months to continue to produce quality results and meet stated programmatic objectives that are aligned with the city's carbon neutrality and emergency preparedness goals. Finally, a quick snapshot of what's to come. This fall, we'll be working with CED to fully develop our PPA concept and prepare a scope for bid. We'll return to you to provide an update this winter with new microgrid program capital costs to cover the PPA development and internal oversight costs, such as design and permitting. And we'll be amending our fiscal year 24-25 budget requests to cover those and the permanent program manager costs. And finally, we hope to be awarded the RRGP Microgrids Roadmap Grant and simultaneously be able to move forward on designs for our 30 community serving priority locations. Thank you for the opportunity to provide you this update. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions now or in the future.
Great. Thank you, Carol, and that concludes our presentation. We're open to any comments and questions.
Thank you so much, Walter and Carol. Are there any public comments?
Blair.
Hi, thank you. Blair Beekman here. Just an important reminder with this micro-mobility work, this should be the work that are the plans to be building our future. That is a future of more local community energy ideas and creations and questions. We're really headed towards a future of a more localized process in our decision making. That means a more participatory process. And so, you know, the work I do with tech accountability, there's a whole field of trying to address, we're moving towards a process of more participatory democracy and not so much representational, or redefining those terms. So good luck with this sort of work and efforts and the future we're trying to build. It's important. I hope we can do it decent and well, and a good time for all, a positive experience for all. Thank you.
Back to the committee.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions from colleagues? All right, I just have one question about the timeline. You said that there's going to be a preparation of the bid documents for PPA, and you said it's going to come back. Is it coming back to this committee first? Is it going to go to council? What's the timeline for that?
So right now we're working on a council meeting request for this money for conducting some preliminary high-level studies in the cost of around $1 million with CED. And we expect to take that to council and then to work with them to develop the full PPA scope, which we would bring back to council for approval or to the committee if we are directed to do so.
Okay, I think we'll leave it to your discretion as to whether it needs to be vetted by the committee before it goes to council ahead of the month ahead. And right before it goes to council, maybe an extra set of eyes before it does would be helpful, but I don't necessarily need to request that if you don't find it necessary. Is there a motion to accept the report?
Move acceptance.
Second.
All right, we will move on to a vote. I was trying to stall for one more minute, but it looks like we have 3 people voting. The motion carries 3-0 with Davis and Foley absent. All right, that brings us to open forum.
Paul.
Yes, Paul Soto from the Horse. I'd just like to state for the record that right before I was about to speak, coincidentally was kicked off Zoom and put right back on. The clerk confirmed that. That's happened a lot, too much to be considered coincidence. So I'd just like to state that for the record, that I've been denied my absolute right to comment at public comment during city council meetings. In terms of open forum, there's an exploitation of the poverty that's been going on generationally in barrios, Saspuedes, Barrio Lomas, Vickystown. All these barrios were segregated using the 1939 map and through time. Now that we want to build this entire infrastructure, we're going through a transition period here in our city.
Are you still there, Paul? Blair?
Hi, Blair Beekman. Thank you for the words of Paul today. You know, I'm living in San Diego now. I love it here. It is warmer, but I've done a lot of work in San Jose over 8 years now. So I don't want to give that work up. So I want to be around. I want to be a part of the San Jose experience. I come up there and still attend meetings. So with that said, let's hope for a warm October. And we've gone through our formal September now. I had a few words that there is a hit and run fatality involving a person in a scooter in San Diego recently. San Diego Councilperson Kent Lee at San Diego Transportation Committee meeting had recently questioned is city government programming its geofencing to purposely speed up some scooters if the scooters cross certain zones where they're not supposed to be allowed, for example, city sidewalks. From this, is San Jose doing the same sort of experimental geofencing programming at this time as well? I feel we are trying to better consider a more positive, sustainable collective and good future. We're at a time to make a more full community effort for all levels of government to learn how to not cause accidents, harm, and death to everyday persons. A reminder that among good purposes, more open, responsible, and accountable tech practices and policies at this time may also be of help in how to help save people from being hurt and from this to also save millions of dollars in each year in city government litigation. The future of our policy making should always be to first consider human rights and civil protection policies and concepts, and then it can be easier to consider easier, safer, and more less harmful in how to consider the ideas and policies of money and law enforcement. Thanks. I had a little trouble saying that, but hopefully you got my drift. Thanks.
Paul? Should I not give Paul again this chance? We can't hear you, Paul. On to the next speaker, where you can raise your hand again. Lillian?
Yes, thank you to the last speaker on the e-scooters once again. But Councilman Cohen, we spoke before, and I think you know that I'm all about greenhouse reduction and emissions, carbon emissions. But the reason I always call in is because I know you sit on this environmental committee, and I know you love trees just as much as I do. And mature trees, we're being cut down due to development in San Jose. But I noticed that developers are leaving more of the mature trees up and not actually uprooting them and cutting down, which is a plus for our city, which really was at one time Tree USA. We talk about greenhouse reductions, and I talk about this to students in class. I'm a sub teacher. I'm off this week, by the way. And I talk to students about carbon emissions, and I talk to students about, do you love those trees out there on the playground and in our parks? And our mayor, who volunteers at a lot of parks and cleans up parks, probably also loves trees. And the reason I bring that up is, yes, I'm in my 60s and I've been a tree hugger for a long, long time. But I do believe that when you show something on your video screen and you start out with a hand holding a tree, and then you show huge development with no trees around it. And today we know that huge skyscrapers and apartments can have a lot of shrubbery and trees around them. So I'm just trying to focus in on that because I do believe that when we're talking about urban greening and all those other things, these are things we can do right now, right this minute. We don't have to have huge amounts of money to save our mature trees. Yes, we can plant other trees, but they take 30 to 40 years to grow. And the more mature trees actually are a better climate benefit for us. Thank you very much, Councilman Cohen.
All right, thank you. Meeting is adjourned at 2:41 p.m.